Welcome to the Family Milk Cow podcast, where in every episode I cover topics that equip you with the skills and know-how to look after your girls in the barn. Family milk cows are more than just livestock. They are a part of our families. They deserve the best care possible from knowledgeable and responsible owners. So pull up a chair or your milk stool and let's dive into another episode of the Family Milk Cow podcast. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Family Milk Cow podcast. My name is Kelsey Wolf. I'm your host. You can find me at the blog and YouTube channel Rough and Tumble Farmhouse. Now today we are going to be talking about proper sanitation and hygiene in terms of prepping your cow for milking and how to clean up after you've milked. So let's dive into this topic. First of all, there's a really great quote I liked from an article I was reading while doing research for this, and they said, quote, "Hygiene is a preventative medicine." And I really love that idea because as long as we are sanitizing and cleaning things up properly, we are going to maximize the health of our cow and maximize the health of the milk that we have for drinking. So let's start at the top when it comes to hygiene. First of all, we want to make sure our cow is living in an environment that isn't super dirty. You want to make sure that they have fresh bedding that they're on, some fresh pasture and grass, hopefully, and they're not just in a mucky, muddy, gross environment. That being said, you will absolutely still have a cow who comes into the stanchion for milking that has somehow laid directly on top of a pile of poop and has a gross, dirty udder. It's going to happen no matter what, but still, we want to have them in a nice, clean environment. Then when they come into the stanchion, we want them coming to a place that is clean as we can make it. I know a lot of folks like to use stall mats in their milking area because those can be easily swept, hosed off, taken out, left in the sunshine for some good old-fashioned sun sanitation. But whatever your milking situation, you just want to make sure the area where you are milking is as clean as you can get it. Now, when it comes to actually sanitizing and cleaning teats, there are a few different options that you can use. I just use a teat wash because that is the dairy farm that I learned how to milk cows at. That is what we used. So I get an udder wash from Fleet Farm. It's not very expensive. It's bright pink. I mix it up to the dilution rate that it tells you to, and I use it to wash the cow's udder. Now, when you're choosing what sort of way you're going to sanitize your cow's teats, make sure you are looking at the bottle for the instructions to use it properly and dilute it properly. For example, the farm that I used to work at, we could mix up our teat wash ahead of time in a big batch, and then we put it in these nifty spray bottles that spray upwards, so then you could spray down the teats and wipe them down. However, the udder wash that I currently use is one that you have to mix up just before you're going to use it. So make sure you understand the instructions of how to use the sanitizing solution you're going with, so that it will work the way it's supposed to work. Now, some other options are, I know there are wipes out there you can get where it's basically like kind of a pack of baby wipes and you take out fresh ones for cleaning off the udder. I haven't seen those before, but they sound pretty slick. I know they have some iodine washes you can use as well. And of course, there is also the teat dip method where you have this little container where it's got an area where you put the dip in the bottom and then an open compartment on the top where you squeeze it and the open compartment fills. You dip the teats and then you wipe them down afterwards. So there are some different options in terms of sanitizing teats. Just to talk through kind of my method, what I do is I have a stainless steel bowl and I mix up my teat solution into the bowl. I use some nice warm water. Then I grab a big stack of paper towels, dry ones, and then I also get a bunch of other paper towels and stick them right in the solution. And when it comes time to sanitize, I use a fresh towel for each teat. Please do not, oh my goodness, please do not just get a big bucket of soapy water with one washcloth and scrub down your cow's udder. We are not scrubbing a floor. We are sanitizing an animal that we are about to milk. So please don't do that because, as we're going to talk about in a second here, you are, number one, you're introducing bacteria into your receptacle that is supposed to be clean or into your bucket that's supposed to be your sanitary environment. You're putting bacteria directly into it. And then also the teats are all their own separate individual contained situation. A cow has 4 quarters. Each one has its own sort of health measurement to it. When we are cleaning the teats, we should be using individual cloths for each individual teat. So how this would look, for example, Juneberry comes in, 3 of her 4 teats are pretty clean, one's pretty dirty. So I will take out paper towel. I will wipe down that teat until that towel is soiled. I throw that paper towel away. I take out a fresh, clean paper towel with a clean hand, not like a dirty, gross hand. I will wipe down that teat till that towel is soiled. I will throw it away. I'll take out a fresh towel. Then when I move on to her next teat, I take out a fresh towel and wipe that teat down. Different towels, different teats. If you aren't doing that, you are risking the chance of spreading potential infections from teat to teat. You can have mastitis in one quarter and the other three are perfectly fine. But if you wash that mastitis infected quarter and then take the exact same towel straight over to another one of your teats, chances are decent you're going to spread that bacteria from one quarter to another quarter. Fresh, clean towels every time. After you have washed all the teats appropriately, then you're going to use a dry towel. Again, separate dry towels for each teat. Clean them up. You don't necessarily have to wash the udder all that much unless it's a situation where you are milking into a bucket maybe and there's a chance of some debris and stuff getting in there. Then you might have to do a more complete washing, but you certainly want to wash the teat itself and up onto the udder and around kind of where, if you are machine milking, where it's going to be coming into contact with the cow's skin. Now, after milking, you do have the option of using a post-teat dip. I was actually just reading a really interesting article about that. Sort of a side tangent. I had a heck of a problem recording this episode of this podcast. So it is 10:15 at night because I am bound and determined to get this episode out on time. But I still, regardless, here at 9:45 at night, I'm sitting here rereading and looking at academic articles about heat dips. So hopefully, hopefully I'm not the only crazy person doing that sort of thing. But anyway, they were talking about in this article how post heat dips came around really in 1916 and they were made of sort of a pine oil solution, which I thought was really interesting because in the dairy industry, they were really having a hard time dealing with a strep, different types of strep infections in their cows. And then they also found that it was very effective at treating different types and preventing staph in their animals. A post heat dip is a nice idea. It helps to prevent bacteria from getting into the teats when they're in sort of an exposed, they've just been milked, the orifices are really open. So that solution helps to sanitize everything and does help the orifices to close a little bit more quickly. However, if you calf share like I do, a post-teat dip is pretty much pointless because as soon as your cow goes out into pasture, first thing that calf does is samples milk from all four teats, trying to figure out which one still has the most milk left in it. So your teat dip is just gone immediately. So I think if you aren't calf sharing, it's a good idea to utilize that. If you're calf sharing, it's probably not worth your time. One last thing I will say about milking and milk sanitation is you might want to wear gloves during the milking process. When I was working at a dairy, we definitely use gloves because we're going, from a lot of different animals that we're handling. On my own farm, I currently choose not to use gloves, but prior to milking, I do use the teat washing solution to sanitize my own hands. I sanitize my hands afterwards, and I am not going from her to another animal. I'm just milking one cow. But if you're milking multiple cows, or if your cow has any sort of infection, potentially like staph or anything like that, there are several zoonotic diseases that can go from an animal or from a cow specifically to you, or that you can give to your cow. Make sure, like, even if you have strep throat and things like that, it's a good idea to glove up in those situations to make sure you're not passing things to your cow or they're not passing it to you. All right, now we're going to dive into sanitizing our milking equipment. I'm going to talk about sanitation or sanitizing steps if you are using a machine for milking. And so just kind of a quick blanket statement, we're going to be covering a couple different types of solutions we use in that process. And for each solution, there's different brands and ones you can use, but I want you to please make sure you're checking the instructions on these to make sure you're getting ones that you can use appropriately. Some are going to have temperature requirements. There's some detergents out there that you need to get the water up to 120 degrees before they're going to be as effective as they're supposed to. Some are designed for use with just cold water. Make sure you're checking the instructions on whatever sort of solutions you're choosing to use to make sure they're working with the system you have in place. Okay, so the first thing we want to do if you're machine milking, after you have gotten the milk out and it's carefully stored away in glass jars in your fridge, then we are going to rinse out our milker. Now, when I worked at a vegetable farm and we did have a family milk cow, we machine milked and it was a really slick setup. We had a big 3-bellied stainless steel sink, and in each compartment we had a different one of the solutions. So it was really nice. We could put the claw in the first solution, suck the solution in, open up the lid of the milker. We take our scrub brush, scrub the inside of the bucket, scrub the inside of the lid, dump that solution out, put the lid back on, put the claw in the next solution, and just run them all through. So that was really handy, but you'll have to, again, if you don't have that nice setup, you'll have to figure out a way that makes sense to run these sanitizing solutions through your milker. Also, as I just mentioned, during this process, you're going to want to have some scrub brushes. You want a scrub brush that you're using on the inside of your milking equipment and a separate scrub brush that is used on the outside of your milking equipment. Write on them with permanent marker or carve in there an O for outside or an I for inside or something to make sure that those brushes are not going to be cross-contaminating your outside of your milk bucket, which is exposed to, poop and pee and everything else, compared to the inside, which would just be pristine, beautiful milk. Okay, so first step, we have gotten our milk out of there. We run a rinse through our bucket. So this should be a lukewarm or a cool water rinse. We don't want to use warm water for this because the hot water is going to make those milk solids start to adhere to the stainless steel, and that's not ideal. Cool or lukewarm water, run it through, take your inside bucket brush, take the lid off, scrub it around the inside of the lid, the inside of the bucket, dump it out, move on to solution number 2. Solution 2 should be an alkaline solution. Most of the time I've seen on instructions that this should be a hot water solution. This is your think of it as like your dish soap, where you're really scrubbing it, hopefully getting all the bacteria and any nasties out of there. All those milk fats and everything should really be coming out with our detergent. After the detergent, the next thing we're going to do is an acid rinse. So an acid rinse is going to lower the pH of the stainless steel of those surfaces. So hopefully any bacteria we have missed with our previous steps should be completely neutralized using an acid rinse. After this, we want to hang everything up to dry, or if you're setting it, inverted on stainless steel shelving, that's fine too. Hang up your tubing, all the stuff so that hopefully it's totally dry by the time you're milking next time. Now, the last solution you may choose to run through is a sanitizing solution. It is recommended if you're going to run a final sanitizer through, or really a first sanitizer through, you do it just prior to milking, as in case anything was missed before, anything has somehow gotten in your milking equipment between your last milking and this milking. I always notice too, for example, when we hang up the hoses to dry, there always seem to be a little moisture in our hoses afterwards. And of course, that should just be the acid rinse that's in there, but still that sanitizer just goes through and is just a fail safe, hopefully, to make sure everything is perfectly sanitized and ready to go before use. And so that's not something that we did when I was at the vegetable farm milking. We typically wouldn't run a sanitizer through, but it is something for sure when I was working at a larger dairy. We always ran a sanitizer through all the lines, through everything, because there's areas you just can't get to scrub out, so you have to make sure everything is sanitary as possible before milk is running through. Now, if you're a hand milker like I am and you're just milking into a bucket, my procedure with that is down in the barn, I will use that teat wash and I will kind of take one of my towels and just wipe down the outside of the bucket, the bottom of the bucket. I don't have a fancy sink set up in my house. I'm bringing that bucket up into my house to my kitchen sink where I'm making food for my family and things like that. I want that bucket to be as clean as possible before it comes in the house. I pour my milk out, take my milk filter and my milk bucket, and I rinse it out with cold water, and then use a dedicated scrub brush, piping hot water and dish soap, scrub out the whole thing, scrub my milk filter, and then it sits upside down on a wire rack to dry. Usually every day at least, I run my filter and my bucket through my dishwasher on a sanitizing cycle. So because I'm able to run them through the dishwasher, I don't think it's necessary to do those other steps. However, there's absolutely nothing wrong if you've decided you want to do those other steps with your bucket in your kitchen, you absolutely can. So that should sum up everything for you, I think, in terms of sanitation down the barn prior to milking and after you're milking and cleaning up. The key takeaways here are make sure you're using separate cloths on those teats, make sure everything is sanitized, and make sure everything is dry. You should be good to go. Thanks so much, guys, for listening. We'll catch you in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Family Milk Cow Podcast. You can become a part of the Family Milk Cow Podcast by joining the Milkmaid Brigade, sponsoring an episode, or following along on social media. You can find links for all these and more, including show notes, at familymilkcowpodcast.com. If you love what you're hearing, please rate, review, subscribe, and turn on those automatic downloads. One of the best ways to support this show is simply by sharing it. And as always, make sure to give your girl down in the barn a good scratch behind the ears from me.